Good morning again. When I think about the issue of human trafficking, I'm so thankful that we can be on this side learning about it versus having to live it. And sometimes when you hear about all the things that are going on with human trafficking, it's hard to imagine. But just consider, all we have to do is imagine it. Somebody else is somewhere living it. She apologized for the fact that we had to park so far this morning because of a funeral. Well, praise God for the opportunity to park and walk versus being here and people coming to see us at the funeral. We always have to put things in perspective. And so when I consider the issue of human trafficking, there are so many things that we need to talk about and so many things we need to be aware of. But the question is always, what about the children? Because as adults, we read the news, we pay attention to things, but our children are not always paying attention. And so as adults, we have a responsibility to look out for the children. When we were here last year, we did a Human Trafficking 101 presentation to try to give you some basic information. And so I'm encouraged that so many of you raised your hand when the question was asked, what do you know? Do you at least know a little bit? So we're hoping that today some of the things that we share will give you some additional insight about trafficking. I'm going to encourage you to grab some paper and pencil and maybe take a few notes as we go along. And sometimes you'll want to look at the screen and sometimes you'll want to look away. Question for you. How many of you have children under the age of 12? Just raise your hands, a few of you. Okay, how many of you have children in your family, whether they're cousins or nieces, nephews, neighborhood children under the age of 12? Okay, now here's a question everybody can answer. How many of you have ever been 12? When you think about 12 is the age where most young women are trafficked. They start as early as 3, 4, and 5, but the average age for trafficking is 12 years old. So imagine yourself at 12. Can you remember 12 years old? At 12, I was skipping rope, I was playing hopscotch, I was playing with dolls, I was going to the museums. I was living life at 12. I was nowhere having sex. At 12 years old, I was in the comfort of my parents' home. I wasn't strapped to a bed somewhere in a basement. At 12 years old, I was studying my school books, not wondering would I ever get away and would anybody know where I was. The issues at 12, for me then, are so different from some of these young girls who are been kidnapped and taken into trafficking. So we have to ask the question, what about the children? When we talk about trafficking, the present rate of trafficking in children is already 10 times higher than the transatlantic slave trade. And most people, when they think about slavery, the first thing we think about is black people in bondage. Well, we know that African Americans were not the only ones in bondage. They were not the only ones ever taken captive. They were not the only ones to ever have to do servitude of any kind, whatever it was, whether it was forced labor and or sex trade. But when you think about what we heard back then and consider that we're talking 10 times the rate now for children. So there's more than half of the victims trafficked into the United States are children. And when we think about trafficking, we think about what's happening over there, not what's happening right here. And so trafficking is happening in the United States and it's happening right here in Michigan. Dare I say Detroit and Pontiac, in Flint and in Grand Rapids, in Ann Arbor and Ypsilanti. It's all over the state. Trafficking is happening. There are more victims of trafficking in the world every 60 seconds. So how long have we been here already? Can you count that? Every moment, there's more and more people being enrolled into trafficking. The number I heard when I first got involved in the work of human trafficking in 2005, 2006 was 27 million. Does anybody know how many zeros are on 27 million?
6.
Lots and lots and lots and lots. There's a lot of people. 27 million, and that was years ago. And so I wonder about statistics. If it's 27 million, and we know that we've set some of the captives free, but every 60 seconds, more women and children and young men and little boys and little girls are being taken captive, what is that number right now, really? And how are they counting that number? So that 27 may be a whole lot more than what's actually being reported. But then every 10 minutes, a woman or child is trafficked right here into the United States. What about our children? When we send our children to school, when we send our children out to play ball, when we send our children to cheerleading practice, we're expecting that they're going to go there and come home safely. Not that a van is going to drive down the street and snatch them off the street. Not that somebody is going to take advantage of them in a locker room. Not that one of their friends is going to invite them to their home and then lock them in a room. We're expecting them to be safe. But our children are only safe if we equip them. Our children are only safe if we stop trying to protect them by keeping them ignorant. They need to know that it's a cruel world, there's evil in the world, and everybody does not mean them well. You know, I remember as a child, my mother would always say, don't talk to strangers. We don't have a don't talk to strangers rule anymore. What we do to strangers is tell them where we go to school, tell them what color we're wearing, tell them where we're going to be. We post our information on the internet. We are living online. And so gone are the days where you don't talk to strangers. You give strangers all your personal information at this point. And then you call them your friends. How many of you know have a child that has 14,000 friends? No child has 14,000 friends, even make-believe friends. Human trafficking is a crime. It is not something that's just bad. It is illegal. It's a crime against humanity. It involves the act of recruiting, transporting, transferring, harboring, or receiving a person through the use of force, coercion, or other means for the purpose of exploiting them. So when you think about trafficking, trafficking means that you've taken somebody, and it's not always against their will, but your person may have been tricked, they may have been coerced, but you've been taking the person and you plan to profit from having that person at your disposal. And so imagine that 12-year-old who went willingly with someone, not knowing that they would be trafficked. Now they're somewhere strapped to a bed, rolling over and over and over and over again. Every year, thousands of men and women and children fall into the hands of traffickers in their own countries and abroad. And so it's not just girls from over there being brought over here, but it's our girls right here being trafficked right here. Trafficking does not mean that you have been taken across state lines. People often confuse trafficking with smuggling. You know, when a person has been smuggled, you know, they go across state lines, but trafficking does not always have to go across state lines. It's not a border necessarily. You can be driven around your neighborhood blindfolded and not know you're still in your same neighborhood. And so trafficking doesn't always require you to go across a border. Okay? But every place in the world is a point of trafficking, whether people are coming into that country or leaving that country, and so including right here. So again, we talk about the act of recruitment, transportation, transferring, harboring, or receipt of a person through the means of force, coercion, abduction, fraud. You deceive a person into thinking that they're getting ready to get something better than what they already have. We talk about vulnerable people groups, those who are engaged in war, those who are in poverty, those with lack of education, or people who simply just want a better life. Does anybody here want a better life? See, everybody's scared to raise your hands now, but that's the secret desire of all of us. We all want a little bit more. We all want a better life. And sometimes the things that are offered to get that better life are not exactly what we think they are. And again, the purpose is exploitation through prostitution, other sexual exploitation through forced labor, and any type of servitude. That's trafficking. I want to give you a little terminology. You don't have to write all this down, but just so that you clearly understand what we're talking about when we say trafficking, this idea of taking a person. A child is defined as anyone under the age of 18. And so when we talk about trafficking, a person is trafficked when they're older and when they're younger. Coercion means that the person's being taken against their will. There's some type of scheme involved that tricks the person to get them there. Debt bondage, meaning that you owe the person. When we first got involved in trafficking back in 2005 and 2006, it was because I received a call from someone in Italy. It was during the time of the Winter Olympics in Torino. And they were calling saying, we heard that you're involved in the work of trafficking. We know that you do missions. Can you please come and help us and get these women off the street? And as I thought about what trafficking meant, that's somebody who has been kidnapped or taken against their will, coerced into bondage. Now they're having to buy themselves back, literally. You think about slavery and you picture people on the slave trade trying to work for their living to buy themselves back. And here are these young girls who are working on the street, having sex with men, trying to make enough money to pay off the debt that they owe to somebody because that person has purchased them. They've been bought with the wrong price. And so when they gave us the call saying, come, I realized at that time, even though it sounded good, it didn't make sense because those girls were not going to listen to us. They had been there for months and had not made money. And now you literally had millions of people coming for the Winter Olympics. It was finally an opportunity to get paid. No one was going to come to a workshop about trafficking. So we waited until after the Olympics to go in to talk to them. And when we got there, we were appalled to find out that 12-year-olds and 14-year-olds had been brought from other countries all over the world there for the Winter Olympics to make money. It was a hard reality, but these women, unknowingly, because you're talking about 13, 14-year-olds who have no education, who don't know the language, who don't understand the culture, who don't have any skills, trying to figure out, how am I going to make a living? And so they're trying to make enough money and sleep with enough men to get paid to buy themselves back out of slavery. Only then to discover that men were paying double for sex without condoms, which means that you had young girls getting pregnant, young girls susceptible to diseases, just all types of atrocities. But they were trying to pay back the debt that they owed. We're clear about force, and harboring means to keep a person secluded away from their family, away from their friends, away from people who could possibly help them. Sex tourism, similar to what we talk about with the Winter Olympics, whenever we have major games or major sporting events, when people go to various vacation spots. Sex tourism, it's an opportunity to pick up girls while you're on vacation. Then slavery, slave trade, and street children. Street children are the kids that we see on the street begging for money. A lot of times those children actually work for someone else. And so these are a lot of the different things that are involved in trafficking. So basic definition of sex trafficking as an adult and that of a teen or a minor are different. And so when we talk about that definition of a child being under 18, that's important because you need to understand that it's not about a person giving permission, because a lot of time a person will willingly go with you if they think they're going to get a better life. But a child cannot willingly have sex if they're under the age of 18. Says criteria for sex trafficking of an adult stipulates either the use of force, fraud, or coercion. There is no stipulation like that for minor children. The law clearly states that a minor cannot consent to commercial sex. So if you're seeing young girls on the street, they are not there because they want to be. A young child cannot willingly consent to sex under the age of 18. So we have to wonder what's going on in our high schools and our middle schools with all these young children having sex with someone. Who's benefiting from that experience? Consensual or not, having paid sex with a minor, someone under the age of 18, it's against the law. Couple of stats. The CIA calculates that profits from one trafficked woman alone averages around $250,000 American dollars per year. That's from one person. Because a woman can be trafficked over and over and over and over again. It's a profitable business. Somebody is getting paid. As many as 2 million children are exploited yearly in the global commercial sex trade, and that's according to UNICEF. And again, the average age is 12, and over 100,000 American children between the ages of 9 and 19 are trafficked. Lots of numbers. When you think about the statistics and the number of children that are being trafficked, think just right now for a moment about how many children you know. Can you picture any of them on the streets? Any of them in lipstick and high-heel shoes, scantily dressed, with some men willing to give you $20, $40, $100? There was recently a case on the internet, some of you may have heard about it, about the young girl who was a virgin. She was from Australia, who was selling her virginity to the highest bidder. Did any of you hear about that? The bid had got over $200,000. And they were saying that because if she had sex in Australia, it would be considered prostitution, and they didn't know the laws in any other land, they would have to have sex in the airplane in the air. And she was saying that she was selling her virginity for a good cause, because the people in her country were homeless, people were living with abject poverty, and she wanted to raise money for homeless people. Does the end justify the means? And so what she was calling a good cause was causing all types of crisis for a lot of people, herself included, even though she didn't realize it. Sex to the highest bidder for her virginity. Look at these pictures for a moment. I want you to tell me what all of these pictures have in common. Any idea what they have in common? Predators. Anybody else? Animals? Including Slicky Joe over there. They're all animals and they're all predators. That's the definition of all of these people. They all have the exact same thing in common. A predator is any animal that lives by preying on another animal. And that's exactly what traffickers do. Or anyone who victimizes, plunders, or destroys another human being, especially for their own gain. The behavior that they all have in common is that they target unsuspecting prey. They stalk unexpected prey, and they blend into the environment. Then they devour their prey. So when you think about traffickers, traffickers look like the rest of us. It's hard to pick a person out. You say, well, how come we can't just go out and arrest all of them? Because we can't identify who all of them are. So you look at these pictures and ask, which one of these people could be a trafficker? Every last one of them, not just Slick Joe up in the corner. Okay? And I say Slick Joe, but that could be Slick Willie, Slick Sue, Slick Sam, Slick Sarah. It could be anybody. But every one of these people could be a trafficker. Even if you notice, some of these people look a little young because they now have traffickers in the schools. Right there where your child is studying math and arithmetic, there's also somebody there talking about science, and somebody talking about biology, and somebody talking about writing, and somebody talking about sex. And it's not the sex education teacher. So when we hear these kind of statistics and this information, we always say, well, no, not my child. Sex trafficking can't happen to my kids because I live in the suburbs. You know, we live in a gated community. My child goes to a good school. They go to a private school. You know, my child is in all the athletic programs and after-school programs, so my child can't be trafficked. Oh, no, my child goes to church. My child is white. My child is black. My child is Hispanic. We live in a good neighborhood. That's not going to happen to my child. Oh, I know everything that's going on with my child. My child is a good kid. Therefore, my child is protected. Do you believe that? Those are the very things that make your child susceptible. Because the trafficker is not going to show up looking like a trafficker. He's going to show up looking like somebody you would least suspect. Remember, they camouflage themselves so that they can fit into the environment. And so when you think about somebody that's going to be in a nice, quiet, suburban neighborhood that's predominantly white, you're not going to have a black guy showing up with a pimp chain and a hat leaning to the side saying, hey, can I see your daughter? You're going to have some white guy in a polo shirt and some jeans showing up saying, hey, I want to take your daughter out. He's going to look like the environment. You know, in the black neighborhood, you're not going to see some white guy in a business suit strolling through the hood on 12th Street saying, hey, I can help you make some extra money. It's going to be somebody that looks like her cousin saying, hey, why don't you come over to this house party? Traffickers blend in, and so you don't know who they are. That's why it's so important that you are very careful. So can your child be trafficked? Absolutely. Does your child have a laptop or a computer that's unmonitored? Most parents are not on the computer 24/7 when their children are there. Your child has an iPhone. Your child has a Facebook or a social network page. All opportunities for trafficking. Your child attends that good school, that private school, where they figured nobody's paying attention to what we're doing here. Hey, your child's involved in those programs after school, and there's somebody there who's waiting after school because you may be late picking them up saying, hey, I can give you a ride. I know your friends. And see, think about that. Because we live online, there's nothing private anymore. You know, how many times have you even run into somebody on the street saying, oh, I know you, we're friends on Facebook. And you look at them and say, oh, yeah, right. Now, do you know them? No. They were a friend of a friend of a friend who asked to be your friend, and you said, okay. And now they're one of your 14,000 friends, and you loosely know their name and know they're related to somebody in your network, but you don't know those people. And so because there's this sense of familiarity, they say, oh, right, I know what church you go to. I have friends at that church. Oh, I know what school you go to. I used to go to that school. So they sound like somebody who should be safe. And so we go away with those people. That's why your children are at risk. You're not with your children 24/7. They need help. So the reasons people are trafficked. Again, we talked about poverty, we talk about disaster, talk about orphans, talk about kids living on the street, anybody who's vulnerable. Kids who are at home in the evenings and their parents who are not there. Kids with older sisters and brothers who are more than 5 years older who have friends that come over to visit in the evenings. Any part of the world where the children are not being educated and not being taught makes them vulnerable. Strict restrictions on legal migration can leave people with no choice but to go underground. And so again, reasons that people are trafficked. Victims are groomed by those who know them, by boyfriends and by girlfriends, people who say, I like you. You know, there was a case that I worked with, a young lady who was attending one of the colleges here. I'm not going to say which college, but just think about it. College students. So we're not talking somebody 12 or somebody 14, somebody you would think that knows better. This young girl went away to college. She was all excited. She got her roommate, and her roommate had everything, the latest in designer fashions and clothes, all the latest gadgets. And she was saying, how are you getting all that on your scholarship? And she told her, my boyfriend helps me out. And she was like, wow, he must really love you. He must really care about you. He bought you all these things. And she says, well, his friend is looking for a girlfriend. I can introduce you. She gets introduced to the boy, that's her friend's friend. They connect. And then he says, hey, you know, let's go over here. I'll buy you something too. He picks up a few things for her. She has sex with him, but it's her boyfriend. He loves her. He's buying her nice things. While they're having sex, somebody videotapes them. She gets the video back on the internet and didn't realize what was going on. Now they're blackmailing her, telling her if she doesn't have sex with some of their other friends, they're going to send this video back to her home church, back to her school, and back to her parents. The girl is terrified. Mind you, she's a college student, so you would think she knows better, especially in this age of technology where people in this very room could be recording everything we're saying and doing, and you would never know. So she goes along with it because she's trying to get the videotape back. Well, they videotape her every time she had sex with anybody. This girl stayed in school for 1 year under duress with her grades slipping, with all this room full of gadgets, and just miserable. Near suicide, she decided to go home and tell her parents what had happened to her and try to get some justice. College student, right here in the state of Michigan at one of our local colleges. So it's happening. It's not just over there. It's right here with people who are being groomed by boyfriends and girlfriends. We've got to make sure that we're talking to our children. This is just the beginning of the conversation, but we've got to keep the conversation going. If you look at this little picture here that's growing, can you tell what that is from where you're sitting? Looks like a package of chicken wings. It's actually a package of women being sold like meat, because that's what happens. They're being sold over and over again. Here's some basic economics on trafficking. If you look at the percentages, people say, well, what happens to those people who are captured or kidnapped or forced or coerced to go different places, who are being led away by fraud? They go different directions. Notice about half of them, 46%, go into prostitution. Then some are into domestic servitude, working in agriculture, working in factories, and some, they have no idea where they are. And those percentages do change back and forward. So if you look at it here on the pie, it looks one way, but when you see the people stacked up, it looks a little bit different. But if you were to line up the number of people who are being trafficked, wall to wall, it would go all around the world several times. What makes our children vulnerable? The teen issues that they're dealing with, family issues that they're dealing with, children who are unhappy, who are looking for somebody who understands them, somebody who can support them, somebody who says, oh, I like you, somebody who says, I understand you. They're looking for the young girl who has low self-esteem, the young girl who's lagging behind the crowd when they're walking through the mall, the young girl who's looking down when she's walking versus looking straight ahead. They're looking for the young guy who doesn't seem to fit in, the young guy who's the loner in the crowd. Technology makes our children vulnerable. And yes, technology is a wonderful thing for getting homework done, for being a global citizen, for having access around the world, but also it's an open door to all the evil around the world. Friends make our children vulnerable because our children are so innocent. They believe everything and they believe everybody. They're talking to every stranger they meet because they think they're their friends. Online dating makes children vulnerable. And I tell women, even those who are in college age, you don't want to meet somebody online because people online are not who they say they are. People create identities to be online. You want to meet somebody who knows somebody. You know, you want somebody who has seen them, who has been with them for a period of time, who can say, here's a person that's trusted. And you only do that with the person you trust, not just somebody you've met online. And I know one of the things I found interesting, because I work a lot with Christians, is that young women will say, well, I found him on a Christian dating site. That really makes it better, like the people who are non-Christians can't go to the Christian sites. They're really safe now because it's a Christian site. But online dating makes you vulnerable. The music and the lyrics. And I know young people hate to hear you talk about their music. And it's not just the rap music, but it's all the music. It's sex, drugs, and violence over and over and over again. You know, there's sexting and texting and pornography and strip clubs and prostitution and those things right in our neighborhoods. It's the corner stores with magazines of lewd pictures right there on the cover. It's all the scantily dressed people everywhere. All those things make our children susceptible. Would you agree that our kids need help? Yeah. Our kids need education. And because you're here and you're hearing this information, I pray that you take what you're hearing back to some child that you know, because you never know whose life you might be saving. So what are the teen issues? A quote from Zig Ziglar says, kids go where there's excitement, but they stay where there's love. And so our kids need to know that they're loved, they're accepted, they're a part of a family, they're connected to something. They go where there's excitement. They're thrill seekers. They're going to go where people seem to be having a great time, but they stay where they're loved. So peer pressure, parental expectations, body images, I'm too tall, I'm too skinny, I'm too dark, I'm too pale, I got too many freckles. All those types of issues for our kids make them vulnerable. That search for significance, parents in conflict, work and play stress. I'm tired of being in school, I'm not getting good grades, I can't hear the teacher, I don't see well, I can't comprehend. Health issues, fear of failure, sex, drugs, trauma. Any little thing can put our child at risk. That's why it's important we spend time with our children. That's why it's important that we spend time letting them know that we love them, that we care about them, being there, being available for them. Having children is a responsibility. We're not just baby machines. We're not just popping out kids. We got to raise those children and help them become responsible adults, help them know how to make good decisions. Trafficking, the technology world, it makes our children vulnerable. So I want to do one last thing here before I pass it over to Nicole, talk about some teen acronyms. We talk about the language of children and the language of chat rooms, and everybody has these abbreviations that they send back and forth. And I admit, I'm old school. I may look young, but I'm over 50. I have a son that's 30. I have 4 grandchildren. But, the world I grew up in this current world is so different. And we had our acronyms, and we had our little cute sayings that we did, and we understood it, but we don't understand the language of our children. In a situation recently, somebody sent me a text, and I guess the text was too long, so it didn't come in sequence. It jumped out of sequence, and so the last part of the text was at the beginning. And so the last thing it says was, please be ADV. And so I'm waiting on the rest of the writing to show up, but what do you suppose the person mean? Please be ADV. What does ADV stand for, an abbreviation? Advised? Available? Advanced? Well, because it was a long text, and it was already 3 parts, and I'm trying to read it and figure out what it meant, I had no idea. I thought the person was still typing. And so I was waiting on the rest of the words to come, so I was not advised, which is what they were trying to tell me. Please be advised. And it was the last thing that came, but it was actually the beginning of the text message. And so when I went back to the first thing that came, it had the ISE on there. I thought ISE was just misspelling for I'm getting ready to. Because again, you don't really know what people are saying. And that's what happens with parents and our children, because our children are speaking a language that we really don't comprehend. We go away with the wrong message. So there's this coded language that kids live by. So I'm going to give you a code test. You got some old school acronyms and some teen talk. So anybody in the room over 50? Yeah, there are a few of you like me. All right, anybody over 40? Because I know the 40-year-olds feel like they're just as old as the 50-year-olds. So we're going to say 40 and up as old school. And then anybody under 40, we'll say teen talk. So I'm just going to read it out. You tell me what it stands for. AKA. I know somebody in the room wanted to say Alpha Kappa Alpha. But it's also known as ASAP, ATM, at the machine, automatic teller machine. And a child would interpret that as my parents because they think we're ATMs. Okay, BTW, by the way, or between. BYOB. Well, depending on where you're going, you bring your own Bible, your own bottle, your own book, your own bed, but bring your own. Okay, CUL. See you later. ETA. Estimated time of arrival. DBA.
Doing business as.
Doing business as. FAQ. Frequently asked questions. FYI. For your information. TMI. Too much information. WISI. WIG. What you see is what you get. High five to somebody in the back. All right, so that's old school. Now, If you're over 40, you can't respond. This is for the people that are under 40. Now, yeah, I tell you what, I should have had the younger people do the old school. And I want the older people to see if they can do teen talk. And then we'll have the older people respond first, then the younger people. So, now remember, these are the things that the kids are saying. ABT, about, ASL, age, sex, location. So, can you imagine somebody texting your teen asking for their ASL? What's your age, your sex, and your location? See, if you don't know my age, my sex, and my location, we shouldn't be talking, because obviously you don't know me.
Right.
But in a casual conversation, somebody wants their ASL. Very good. Okay, ATM. At this moment. At this moment. And so they may send an ATM said, at this moment, this is going on. Okay, AYPI. And your point is? So a person makes a comment, you're trying to figure out where they're going, you send them an AYPI, ask them, and your point is what? Okay. BTDT. Been there, done that. All right, that's somebody in the back who says, I got that one, I got that one. Okay, now here's one. We already talked about BTW, by the way, between CD9. CD9. Code 9, parent by. Code 9, parent by. So somebody's texting, parents in the room, talking to them, don't send me nothing crazy. Code 9, my parent is close by. CTS, change the subject. CTS, change the subject. CWOT, complete waste of time. So again, somebody talking to you, you say, you know, CWOT, that's a complete waste of time. So again, this is the language that they're having back and forth, that if parents are standing there, you would have no idea what they're talking about, because this is very coded language. CYO, see you online. That was a CYA. Somebody in the back going, no, that's not this one. This is CYO. See you online. DIKU, do I know you? So somebody sends an ASL, want to know your age, sex, location. I send back a do I know you. Then somebody sends a code 9, parents standing by. So you get this whole conversation going on between people who are supposed to be friends, who may or may not even know each other, talking about sexual things and meeting online to continue the conversation. FIWI would say, what is for what is worth. Then the HSWM, have sex with me. So who texts a message like that? Probably the same person who texts their breasts, who texts their genital parts, who texts themselves nude, who's just sending a cute picture of their body to their boyfriend, who's just sending a cute picture to their girlfriend, who's now forwarded on to their friends. Now the whole school has seen the picture, and you would think have sex with me is something big. That's no big deal. People are sending body parts via text message. That's why as parents, every so often, you want to check the phone. You want to see what's being sent, what's being received, what's in the history, what's being deleted, because you never know. Okay? So again, teen talk. I'm going to skip over to a couple of things so we can go ahead and wrap up. I want to save some time. I want to mention this website safety here for parents. You can go online and look up any type of monitoring program for websites, because you want to be able to control what happens online. You want to put blocks and filters online to make sure that certain sites are not even accessible. You can put on there that says anything with a triple X won't come up, anything with an X won't come up, certain keywords you can put in to make it difficult to find out anything sexual online. You can also get printed reports or monthly or weekly reports that says, here are all the sites that this computer has gone to. Here are all the things that have come from questionable sites. And so any kind of filter you can find online for your children. So the reasons we don't talk about this kind of stuff is because we don't want to see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. But unless we do, evil will continue to happen. And you don't want people saying, you know, oh, you stuck up, you sound like a prude, you just don't want kids to have no fun. Yes, we want kids to have fun, but we want our children to be safe. And so we need to keep in mind that if we don't talk about it, it's still going to continue. And so we do need to talk about it, and we do need to keep our children safe because the world is watching. What can you do? Write this number down. 888-3737-888. If you have any questions or think anybody is in trouble or think anything is going on, report it. Run the risk, report it. Let somebody do an investigation. 888-3737-888. Keep the conversation going. Tell people what you heard today. Tell people the information that you were exposed to. Ask them what they know about it. Do your own research. There are lots of great books. There are lots of great movies out there. You know, and I really appreciate the movie Trafficked, but how many of you, your father got that skill set? If I was taken, my father could not come get me. If I was taken, my father could not be on a plane in 24 hours on the other side of the world, underground, interpreting Russian and all those other languages trying to come find me. Most parents don't have that skill set, but we do have a voice. And we need to make sure our voice is heard loud and clear, that our children know if they are in trouble, this is the place to come. If somebody is propositioning you, you want to talk to me. Let me know what's going on because I want to be there to help you. Keep the conversation going. Thank you.